بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Imam Ghazali's thesis in فصل التفرقة فصل or more correctly فصل التفرقة, I think. So this is actually a typo here. In فصل التفرقة, Imam Abu Hamid Muhammad bin Muhammad Al-Ghazali radiallahu ta'ala anhu clearly distinguishes between distinguishes beliefs from ideologies. Fasl al-Tafriqa is Imam Ghazali's a small tract. It's only a few pages, but there's a lot of knowledge in it. It's very, very important. Understanding the difference between Iman and madhab, or Iman and ideologies. Other Imams have written similar sort of tracts, like Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah's Raf al-Khilaf, and Imam al-Hujjah, Imam Shah Waliullah al-Dehlawi's Raf al-Khilaf, and others. But this is a very short tract by Imam, but there's a ocean of knowledge in there, so we'll try to learn at least some basics from there. So in Fasl al-Tafriqa, Imam Ghazali clearly distinguishes beliefs from ideology. So belief and ideology. So the distinction between belief and ideologies. So that's the topic, or main. By belief we mean Iman, or even knowledge. On the other hand, by ideology we mean a specific interpretation. Or specific understanding. That you can call madhab as well, because madhab is, or a school of thought, is a specific interpretation of certain text, or certain viewpoint, or certain basic premises, etc. Okay, so Imam Ghazali in his tract Fasl al-Tafriqa distinguishes belief from ideologies. According to our Imam, Islam prescribes three fundamental beliefs only: Tawheed, Risala, and Akhirah. And by Tawheed we mean the oneness and omnipotence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, belief in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his messagehood, and all other prophets, and belief in the day of judgment and hereafter. So these are the three basic beliefs, or Iman, which are the minimum basis for a person coming into the fold of Islam, out of the fold. There are actually six, but The way we have described here, they actually three, but they contain other three within them. We'll look at them in a minute. So amantu billahi wa malaikati wa kutubihi wa rasulihi wal qadri khairihi wa sharrihi min Allah ta'ala wal ba'as ba'd al maut. So that's six. So Tawheed. So Tawheed include belief in Qadr, Khair and Shar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, good and bad. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the belief in destiny. So that's part of Tawheed. So that's why the three, but we have reduced here. So it is part of the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He is all-knowing and all-powerful, and He is the creator and all that. So that's Tawheed. That's the first one. Tawheed. And number two is the Risalat, or Risala, or in Urdu or Farsi we call Risalat. And that includes belief in the angels, because they are messengers of God as well, and they are the one who bring the message to the prophet. And Risala include the belief in all the prophets and messengers. So denying any one of them would take you out of Islam. And the finality of the Prophet ﷺ's message, that's also part of the belief in Risala. And believing on all the books from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is also part of, because if you're believing in messengers, so the belief in message is part of the belief in message. And belief in other prophets than our prophet, and other books than Quran. Belief that they were from God. That's the belief. But we follow our prophet and our book because we don't know what is known of those prophets today, whether it's true or false. And that's why the prophet and the Quran is the guardian over all other prophets and their books, because this tells us what was their real message. And although the Prophet ﷺ has allowed us to narrate from the people of book, that's why you see the narrations in our books. But he has also told us, don't verify what they say and don't deny what they say, because if you don't know, if you verify something as from God when you don't know whether it is from God or not, then you will be committing some grave error and simply denying something which is actually from God. So what we see in other people's books, that is of three types. The one which agree with the Quran and message of God, so we of course verify them because Quran, and that which obviously disagree with Quran and the message of Prophet ﷺ, so we deny that. And number three, which is neither agree nor disagree, so we withhold our opinion. So that's the methodology. So that's part of the belief in messengers. And the last one is the Day of Judgment. Akhirat. No, it's like that. And so Akhirah, Urdu Akhirat, Day of Judgment, and all that include resurrection. So these are the main belief systems, 3, which include other 3, as I said: Tawheed, Risala, and belief in them, not in their details, but in the basic beliefs in a summary in summary fashion, is enough for someone to bring in Islam, keep in the fold of Islam. As long as one stick to them. Obviously, that's the minimum. So then you can build, if you want, people can know about the details through deep study. So everybody is judged according to the level of their knowledge. But the minimum remains very simple. And those 3 things, which include other 3 things, and those are the things which is narrated from a great mutakallimin. Then when they were dying, they asked Allah to, give them death on the Iman of the Ajais of Nishapur, the old women of Nishapur, a non-Arab city. The old women, their Iman was enough for them to, So that's what they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the basic of Islam. And that's the basis of Islamic tolerance as well, because as long as someone stick to these basics, it remains Islam, even if he is, he or she makes mistake in details. That's why you can't exclude anybody from Islam if they accept those basics in a summarily fashion, merely on interpretation, because interpretation is not Iman, it is madhabs. It is an ideology. And people are resurrected based on their Iman. Obviously, when those who seek knowledge, and that is, madhab is important, interpretation is important, but that is not minimal, essential, required. So those who are able to, and those who have enough knowledge, they can go into interpretation. But for a common person, that Iman is enough, and that provides the basic ethos of Islam, that of tolerance. That's why you don't see, Inquisition and all that in Islam, because what can keep you in Islam is very simple, straightforward, and we don't look into people's heart. We don't test them. We just accept them on their face value, and because real judgment is after your death, and after the day of judgment. And when people ignore this fact, then they go into extremism and all that, which is, against Islam's ethos, basic ethos. And that's why you see that even the people, based on their interpretation or ideologies, they disagree, wholeheartedly, and they uh, debate with each other, and they call themselves kafir and all that. But that calling them kafir is in a non-technical sense most of the time, uh, because if they really believe that they were kafir, they would have dealt with them totally differently. And by kafir, they just mean that they think that they believe in certain deviations, even though those deviations, as long as they believe in the basics, they still are within the fold of Islam. That's why even those people who call Shias kafir, for example, like some sects of Shia, nobody calls all Shias kafir, obviously, but they have never stopped them from Hajj, for example. So if they really believe that they were kafir, they would have for sure, and it's not just political. So that's the basic difference Imam Ghazali is trying to establish here, because it is the basis of Islamic tolerance, and that society of love, basically, and which is based on tolerance, based on al-wasatiyya, on moderation, based on justice, and based on bringing people into the fold of Islam, not excluding them. We are not the Ummah of exclusion, we are the Ummah of inclusion. That's what distinguishes us from Jews, for example. So in that we are close to Christians, in the sense that they are universalists as well, like Muslims. And this basic Islamic tolerance and inclusivity is not based on any pragmatism. It's based on a fundamental epistemological insight, and that is the topic of this tract of our Imam. The discourses, and that's the insight is this one, and we'll finish on this today, inshallah. The discourses that are developed to articulate these beliefs, that is, belief in the basic fundamental, are necessarily based on a specific interpretation of the nusus. So that's the thing I want to. So what is the epistemological foundation of what we have said? Epistemological. What is the epistemological insight of this distinction between Iman, or knowledge, and ideology, or al-madhab, or interpretation, a particular interpretation? The basic insight is that your knowledge of the basic, the fundamental of metaphysical knowledge is necessarily based on texts, what are called nusus, and the texts are obviously only two, Quran and the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Al-Quran was Sunnah. And we have included here also in the footnote both the revealed text and its historical practical manifestation. And we include al-amal, so the practice, because that's practice tells us the meaning of the text more than anything. And by practice we mean both the tradition, practical tradition, and institution, because that institutions. So these are the basic texts, okay, and they are not very many. And Going back to the text, so the discourses that are developed and articulate these beliefs are necessarily based on a specific interpretation. So details of these beliefs are specific interpretations of the text. And a specific interpretation is the interpretation. A specific interpretation itself is not a text. It is my understanding of the text, your understanding of the text, or understanding by a scholar or schools of a scholar. It doesn't matter how big a scholar you are. The limitations of human minds are to be taken into consideration, and there's no all as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, all the sons of Adam are khatta'un, they make mistake, and the best of them are those who, when they realize their mistakes, they correct themselves. So this difference between Iman and al-madhab or ideology is based on the difference between text, which is revealed, perfect, limitless, divine, and a specific interpretation of a divine text, which is always, doesn't matter, limited. And always going to create imperfection. So that's why we have to always give benefit of doubt when it comes to a specific interpretation, when it comes to madhab or ideology or interpretation, unless you have ijma, which is consensus of all the scholars, then that has sort of asma, perfection, which is, even though subservient to the revealed text, is in the same class. But ijma is on those basic things. There is hardly ever ijma on details. So that's why the summary or the overall belief in Tawheed, oneness of God, Risala, message and messenger, and the day of judgment and the next life. So there's no, and even the details of these are not considered. Details of these are also interpretation, but overall, or a belief in them in a summary fashion, that is part of knowledge, because of two reasons. First is the text in that context is clear, and the other thing is there is some ijma on the meaning of those things. So that's why they are definite. They don't have human limitations and imperfection. But anything else is a specific human interpretation, and a specific human interpretation is always going to be imperfect. That's why we can't exclude people from the community based on something which is not perfect. And that's the basis of Islamic love and the Islamic inclusivity and the Islamic tolerance. So we'll stop here today and we'll continue with this text.